Welcome back to Repair Shop Reckoning. Today I have Mr. MasterTech, Dustin. How you doing, Dustin?
Good. How are you?
Good. I got Chris Craig here. We all know who Chris Craig is. We had a little bit of a discussion going back and forth last week, last Friday. I got off the airplane. I was in South Dakota. I had clients, and Dustin was pissed off about one of my posts and called me an asshole. And I did my, no, don't be embarrassed. It's okay. We're all adults here.
My attitude gets the best of me sometimes.
That's okay. But you know what I did in my fashion? Anybody who knows me, I just pick up the phone and call. And the reason why, you cannot read emotions through text messages or posts on TikTok or Facebook. And once I talk to usually anybody I have a problem with, usually we're pretty much on the same page or at odds, but everybody has their points. And you know what? Let's be adults here and not fight with each other, clicking back and forth and putting shitty little snarky comments. Let's call each other on the phone, have a podcast, and talk about it. So, basically the post was, I don't even, honestly, truthfully, everybody's been flaying me so much lately. What was that post about, actually?
It was episode Chris came on.
Oh, yeah.
About flat rate.
Yeah, we were talking about flat rate, and Chris talked about leadership. I talked about flat rate, stuff like that. Just to be clear, my thought on flat rate is it works inside of my four walls and my buildings because I care about my people and I make sure they make money. Now, from what I've understand and what I've been learning quite a bit about the dealerships, and I've said this before, they don't give a shit. They have leadership problems. The flat rate's broken. Everything's going on. And you could disagree or you want. It starts at the top. If I didn't take care of my guys, flat rate, I would be no different than the dealer. But I care enough to make sure these guys make a living working for me. And I do have an hourly guy. He's the guy who left the nut on the tie rod loose. That other discussion down the road here is going to be coming up. But I care about what people that work for me make. Every week I do payroll, and I cannot say this enough. I keep repeating myself. Flat rate works for me. Now, my two guys are on a flat rate. I asked them again this morning when I was down there. I go, do you guys ever want to go hourly? And they both said no because they make a lot of money on flat rate. But I am definitely in charge of what goes on in my shop, and I have processes in place. And most of the time they work, except when you have to tighten a tie rod nut and not put a cotter key in. That seems to be broken, but we fixed that. So let's go ahead and start with you, Chris, and you guys can go back and forth.
Yeah, going back to the podcast, Kevin, we were talking about, how what inspired that podcast actually is that we had so many comments of people just, I hate flat rate. If flat rate went away, it would solve everything in the industry, all this kind of stuff. And my position on that is, well, flat rate does have its issues and it's not a perfect system, though there is no perfect system. I believe that flat rate can work in shops that do have good leadership because that good leadership puts together the systems, the processes, the teamwork, everything that you need to set you up for success. Now, I take that with a grain of salt. There are some things that are outside of leadership control to some degree. Like in the dealership, warranty times are typically extremely unfair, sometimes undercutting technicians by as much as 50%. And they also get a discount on the labor side as far as paying for that, the dollar amount. And I think we talked about that on your show as well on that same podcast, Kevin. So there's some of the stuff that's out of their control. They could internal a couple of hours. There's that sort of thing. But that's my position on it, is that if we have good leadership, flat rate is a system that can work. And we've seen it work because you just referenced two technicians, I believe you said two, that said, hey, we actually make a killing on flat rate. We don't want to see it go away. And that's a comment that you don't see in the comment section that often. I think it's because they don't want the woodwork to come after them because it's usually a bunch of negative comments. But there's plenty of technicians out there that make really good money on flat rate that don't want to go to an hourly or salary basis because they make so much money on flat rate. And I suspect it's because they're working in a place that has good leadership and good systems and processes in place.
Take it away, Dustin.
Okay, so I agree with you. If you are working, let's say your shop, Kevin, for example, it seems like you're pretty invested in making sure that things are running smoothly, correct? You're saying that flat rate works for you guys, and I'm not saying that flat rate is not going to work at all and that getting rid of it is the end-all be-all, fix the entire industry. I'm just saying from my experience at the dealer, the technicians are held financially responsible for leadership shortfalls. Okay. And what we're seeing right now is dealership technicians are being abused. We are being abused, and flat rate is a way for the dealerships to make sure that we're there working. And if something happens, if they get slow, if there's a parts delay, if there's a lot of different things that are not in our control, the mechanics are financially responsible for this. Whereas I kind of feel like, okay, if there were some sort of, let's say, if there was some sort of like guarantee or hybrid pay for automotive technicians, I kind of feel like that would motivate better leadership on its own. I feel like that, we can start from the top. You can start from the top. You have a really good leadership. But if we had mechanics that were paid hourly or like some sort of hybrid pay, I like the hybrid pay system because there's still some sort of incentive there to do better, to flag your hours. Let's be honest, we're human. Mechanics are going to take advantage of it. I know that. But I feel like that just having good leadership is not going to fix that system that we have in place at the dealerships for a lot of different reasons.
What are those reasons, if you don't mind me asking?
Okay, so there are a lot of things, like especially as far as like warranty pay. The warranty pay, it's almost impossible to make money on warranty at a dealership. Okay, not to mention the fact that, and like I had stated before, you are kind of chained by having to run clock time on the cars, correct? So you can run clock time on one car, and you're expected to be efficient at the warranty times and everything. But if the group of technicians starts to get efficient at a job, they drop the time from the manufacturer. Okay, so there's that. Then there's like pretty much every car that you get, if you have to order a part, it's like back ordered. You're working on back order. It's difficult to flag hours and keep things going when there are just so many different things that are not in your control.
Yeah. So on that, I also want to reference that, it's not just technicians that suffer when business is slow. It's basically every employee in the dealership. There's not really an employee in a dealership that isn't on some sort of a commission or performance-based pay. Like, for example, as a service advisor, I showed up for work plenty of days, didn't write a single ticket because we had no business, and I made $0.00 for all 11 hours of my input that day. Back order parts also affected me. I mean, it's on everybody. It's not just the technicians, though the technicians definitely feel it. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And on the warranty side, you're absolutely correct. Technicians, they don't make a fair amount of money on warranty. There's a lot of things that go with that. Again, I'll reference, it depends on your pay plan. As a service advisor, there was dealerships where I made $0.00 on every warranty ticket. That's just how it was. I only made money on customer pay. So it was actually a bit of a steeper climb for me in that specific situation. Now, there's a reason why I write extensively about pay plans in my book. It is so different depending on where you go, so we don't have to dive into that. But the point I want to make here is that you can still succeed, and I've seen it on flat rate, when you can balance out through proper distribution of work in the shop, when you can balance out those warranty versus customer pay tickets. Now, if you're a technician that's raising your hand and saying, but Chris, I only get warranty tickets, there's no customer pay, we can highlight a leadership issue here. That tells me that your dealership sucks at retaining customers, and that when their warranty runs out, they run to the independent shops to get a discount on their work, because independent shops, for the most part, not all of them, for the most part, undercut the labor cost of the dealership. So when they switch over to customer pay, meaning their warranty expired, they're not sticking around at the dealership, so they're not retaining their customers, which means that customer pay work that those technicians need is not being retained. And that is something that a leader can step in and put in policies and procedures and training to help those customers be retained for the long term for their technicians.
Okay, I kind of agree with that too. But so at most dealerships that I've worked at, there have been people that specialize in different areas. You have a front end guy, you have a transmission guy, you have an engine guy. I mean, or a couple of guys, that specialize in just these things. They're certified to do so. Usually, because of the technician shortage, we are bogged down with warranty work as far as our profession and what we specialize in. Myself, as a transmission tech, I couldn't get out from underneath the warranty work, especially after the GM strikes. I remember there was a point in time I had 6 bays in the shop that I worked at. I was the only transmission tech, and you know how warranty works. You have to take it apart, find the cause of failure, and then order parts, correct?
Yeah.
So you have to take the transmissions out, which disables the vehicle, especially if it's front wheel drive or all wheel drive, like a GMC Acadia or something along those lines. So you take those apart, you order parts. Well, we had a GM strike and we couldn't get parts, and I couldn't move these cars out of the shop. So what happened with my hours at that point? They pretty much tanked into nothing. Couldn't flag hours on the jobs that I was working on, waiting on parts, and essentially I was suffering because of that.
So you're waiting on parts. So was there times, am I getting this correct, that you were just like sitting there and you didn't have anything to do? You were just kind of like waiting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep,
Okay,
there
so
were
in that
times.
go ahead,
Go ahead.
finish.
So there were times that there was absolutely nothing for me to be able to do. And I will also say that the hourly rate that I was at kind of influenced that as well.
Yeah. Well, so okay, I'll kind of dive back into the leadership side again. So if I'm the leader, right, if I'm the manager, and I have a technician of your stature just sitting in a bay waiting on parts, you said you had 6 bays. Why were you not being fed any other kind of work that's, say, customer pay, that would give you something to do while you wait on those warranty parts?
Well, I wasn't the only technician that had that problem. And unfortunately, I believe a lot of the time it's because of the hourly rate that I was at too. They didn't like to give me break jobs. They didn't like to give me easy stuff because of the hourly rate that I was at. It affected the advisor pay because they get paid on their gross. So that was a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, we can't go back and prove or disprove that. That is very rarely, it could be a possibility, but as a manager, right, if you have technician, and this is why I go back to the leadership side, because from a management perspective, Dustin, that makes perfect sense, because that's what keeps us in the black, profitable and all that. But from a leadership perspective, it makes no sense, because somebody like you is actually being hurt by that. So that's why I keep saying is that we have great management, we have poor leadership, because if you had an actual leader in my shop, I suspect that regardless of what you made per flagged hour, they would be feeding you those customer pay jobs like the brakes and the coolant services and the brake fluid services to keep you busy and turning wrenches in your bays while you wait on parts. So if you, and this is my position, I suspect if you had a leader that actually cared about his or her people, you would have been fed that customer pay work in the interim while you waited for those warranty parts, which would have solved, I suspect, your issues.
I
Okay.
think, hang on, guys. I think that one of the big problems we have going on here, and I've heard this several times, with Dustin talking about his pay being so high, they're literally talking at some of these dealerships around here that if Dustin say he makes $60 an hour flat rate, if he does brakes, he only gets $40 an hour flat rate. That's the way they're talking about keeping their numbers up, which is bullshit, number one. And number two, I think honestly, inherently, the dealer system is broken. And I agree with the leadership part, but you only can if you have management here and you're a leader here, you're the shop foreman or you're pushing out the work. These guys are always worried about their numbers here, the fix ops guys, right? So if they have to screw Dustin, I have a feeling most of these dealerships will do it. And I'm seeing it around us a lot. And I've been actually talking to a lot of dealer guys because I didn't believe a lot of this stuff. It's a loaded freaking game against the freaking technicians, the service advisors. I put the post up about CSI. Holy shit. You get a couple bad reviews, it can cost you $2,000 out of your commission check. That's freaking bullshit. I'm sorry. To do that to people is horrible. That is, I have no words for it. Well, I have words for it, but I probably get myself in trouble again on TikTok, so I won't say them words. But I just think it's crap that they do that to these guys. So,
Yeah, no,
go
my
on.
record's $4,000 that I lost 1 month on one bad survey.
Yeah, I was going to say
so
one
it
bad
happens.
survey pretty much take care of their whole paycheck,
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
so where does that $4,000 go? And the other thing, the other part of my argument is it seems like the manufacturers have set this game up to make everybody pretty much slaves of the dealership, slaves of the numbers, and try to work the system. Like you just said, one of the things going on in social media right now, if these guys are bragging about warranty times, the manufacturers look into that and all of a sudden cut the warranty times down.
They
So
do.
people need to keep
Yeah,
their mouth
that's true.
shut.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's a true thing.
a lot of the time what'll happen is you get these young guys or whatever, they go into training and they'll brag about a shortcut that we all know about, that everybody knows about, that we do all the time so that we can try to beat the warranty times. And what'll happen is they a lot of the time they'll have like a spy in those classes. They have people sitting in that work for the manufacturer, and they will just sit there and observe. They'll pretend that they're part of the class. You won't know who they are or what they're doing. But this is what their job is. Their job is to see what the technicians are saying and how we're making our shortcuts. And then miraculously, the shortcuts are causing our times to drop again.
Yeah, and that is the truth, Kevin. That actually really does happen. Anytime a technician finds a shortcut on a job, it's actually a spoken rule, but it's an unspoken rule that you don't tell anybody about that. Sometimes you don't even tell your advisor about that because you don't want the manufacturer to learn of it, because if they record that enough, now if they hear it one time, they're not going to drop it, but they have a system in place where they put enough of these like stories into a basket and say, okay, it's reasonable now to drop this flat rate time. Not actually reasonable, but to them, they can assess reasonably that it's okay to drop this time down because they found a quicker way to do it. Now, you would think that, well, that kind of makes sense. If they're taking 2 hours to do it, they should get paid 2 hours. That's actually not the case, though, because in the first place, they're already being undercut. They found a shortcut that got them really back up to like where it should be to like justify it on some degree, but then they cut it back, and then that percentage is still essentially what it was designed to be in the first place. So on the warranty side, I'll say all day that technicians are completely ran over. Advisors, everybody's ran over on the warranty side. We talked about this on your show, like I said earlier, but there are some states, and I want to throw this out there. There are some states that have legislation. I think New York's one of them. Ohio's thinking about doing it. I think there's like 7 total that manufacturers are now required to pay customer pay times as far as flat rate goes to the dealership on those flat rate jobs, on those warranty jobs. What I've heard is that now the hoops that the administrative side of the dealership has to jump through to get those jobs paid for is like tenfold. So now the documentation has to be even more crisp, even more perfect. There's more authorizations, more hoops to jump through. So it's now harder to get them to pay that out because they have to pay that customer pay time. So there's more battles to be fought on that front.
Right. I had actually heard that they were paying time and a half what the warranty time would have been. They have to pay them time and a half, but I don't know if it's true or not. That's what I had heard. But since then, I don't know if you've paid attention, but a lot of technicians are noticing that the aftermarket times are dropping as well, like the all data and pro demand times. Since then, those times have come down like substantially.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've never looked into it though. I have no idea if it's true, untrue, or
I have noticed a few times they've dropped substantially.
Yeah,
Specifically transmission related stuff.
Yeah, the manufacturers, let's face facts here. It's like no different in the collision world right now. Tell me it's fair when you have Facebook groups and you have the moderators of the group are insurance adjusters that work for insurance companies. Ain't that some bullshit? You know what I mean? It's like, let's face it. I think we all can agree the manufacturer is the problem. Okay, we didn't design it, we didn't make it, we didn't break it. We're the guys that have to fix it, and we're supposed to take a concession. Around here, several of the dealerships now are doing customer pay times. They don't even pay their techs warranty times, but they can't keep techs. So now that one of their big things, now they're hiring guys for actual customer pay non-warranty times to do these jobs, and they're eating the difference.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier is they can internal that different time. So say like Dustin, this job pays 4 hours CP, customer pay, and you're only getting 2 on warranty. They can internal you an extra 2 hours, right? And get you up to that 4 hours internal, meaning the dealership pays that for you.
Sure.
So so there's things that they can do. And I will say we actually agree the hybrid pay system is the way to go. But again, it only works if you have good leadership. I'll give you an example. I worked in a dealership where there was a hybrid pay system. The technician's got a 40-hour guarantee. No matter what happened this week, I don't care if you flag 2 hours, they get paid 40 hours, period, which sounds great. And then there's an incentive structure in there. So if the technician flags 50 hours, the amount they make per hour goes up by a certain number. So maybe they get an extra $2 an hour, which compounds over that 40 to 50 hours. So there's an incentive structure in place. Now, not every technician cared about that. They just kind of came in, flagged 25 hours a week, and took home their 40 week after week after week after week. And the shop was getting backed up. I was feeling it on the customer service front. I had like 60 to 100 open repair orders at one time because a lot of technicians were abusing that system. So that's, again, even on a hybrid system, you have to have a leader that steps in and monitors that efficiency, making sure that those technicians are flagging at least close to that 40-hour mark if that guarantee is on that 40-hour mark. Now, of course, there's going to be certain weeks where you fall behind, certain things are going to happen. There's a reasonable expectation there, but you still have to have a leadership structure that's in place monitoring this stuff and ensuring that those technicians and those advisors, everybody is at least meeting that standard.
Okay, so I'm going to say that unfortunately, a good leadership structure does not go well with corporate greed. And I understand a lot of technicians have abused that system, but I kind of feel like a lot of the, so you talked about servitude as far as like servitude for the technicians and helping the technicians and being a good leader, supporting the technicians. I agree with that. But unfortunately, if there's no incentive to do so, you can't force people to have servitude towards a technician. But what you can do is if you implement some sort of hybrid pay structure or guarantee, that is almost going to guarantee that those people are going to make sure you're as efficient as possible, correct?
You're saying that if they're on a guarantee, the technicians will make sure that they're efficient on their own?
Management, parts department, everything. Because they're
You would-
losing money at that point. Dealership is losing money at that point.
You would think that, Dustin, but it's a lived experience where they did not. It did not make the managers focus on efficiency whatsoever. They allowed many technicians to flag just 25 hours a week in this one dealership. Now, this is a case study of one single dealership. But no, they were able to flag like 25 hours a week and still take home 40. As a matter of fact, they were also allowed to walk up to the manager and say, hey, can I pre-flag jobs I haven't done yet to get me to the 50 hours so I can have a bonus this week? And then just roll that week after week after week after week, which was a nightmare on the paperwork front. So no, it did not naturally inspire that management team in that specific dealership to do anything about efficiency.
That's crazy. I had a lived experience of my own working at one of the dealerships that I was at. And I did have some sort of a hybrid pay system. It was like a 30-hour guarantee. And then after that, it was like a 30-hour guarantee. I kept everything after 30 hours. And there was like a pay structure bonus per hour. And when I got put on that system, because I was, the transmission tech, I was having a hard time flagging hours. I was working 12, 14 hours a day and every Saturday. I was always working. I was always there, always doing what I needed to do. And I got put on this pay plan, and it was crazy how drastically everything changed. My fixed ops director was coming down. Dustin, what do you need? Dustin, what do you need? Do you need this? Can I go get the parts for this? It was crazy how things changed because he, was potentially going to lose money at that point if I wasn't being productive. And it did light a fire under his butt to do the things that I needed him to do when I had been voicing what I needed before and nobody did anything about it.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of points to my original point there is that you got to have a manager who's a leader who's engaged, right? Making sure that the advisors are doing their job, the technicians are doing their job, regardless of the pay system, even if they're hourly, right? If the technicians aren't turning wrenches on an hourly basis, the shop is eating a lot of money at that point. And you have to have a management structure in place that's going to root out those people and say, hey, why are you not getting work done? Are you untrained? Are you unwilling? And if they're untrained or unwilling, regardless of which direction that goes, it's a leader's problem to solve, because if they're untrained, they didn't facilitate the access to that training. And if they're unwilling, then what did the leader do to miscommunicate what this job actually entails? And that's why I always circle back to this leadership thing. You mentioned in your post that you had to move 16 cars to get to one car while on flat rate, and then you got in trouble for not being in your bay, but nobody would help you move these cars, and it sounds like you had really bad lot management. Was that a Chrysler dealership, can I ask?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Jeff's gonna be pissed. Jada mechanics.
No, listen. The reason because you go to. I'm going to get in trouble. You go to any Chrysler dealership in this country, the parking lot is a nightmare because they carry so many models. It's insane. But I just knew that right away. Anyways, you mentioned you had to go through all of that. And we kind of went back and forth on that front. And I said, that's actually a leadership issue. Like, flat rate didn't cause you to move 16 cars. Poor lot management and bad leadership and bad policy and procedure did. And then I believe that you kind of came back and said, well, if I was paid hourly or salary, it wouldn't matter anyways. And that's true. You would still be paid, but, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, now that you've got the pay thing figured out, the next thing I suspect anybody's going to start caring about is quality of life at work, right? they're going to get really tired of moving 16 freaking cars every single day to get to another car and deal with this advisor who doesn't know how to do his job. Like, even though I'm getting paid, I'm going to end up looking for jobs elsewhere because I'm getting paid here, but I can't stand working here because I'm actually just not happy with anything that's happening here. And we've seen this happen time and time again where people leave. I'm one of them. You'll leave 6-figure jobs because you just hate working there. So what do you think about that, Dustin?
So at that dealership, this dealership was actually a dealership that I was paid 40 hours a week, guaranteed. My job was to fix everybody's comebacks and do transmission work. That was basically working shop foreman, if you will.
Yeah.
But there, before I got that was when I moved all those cars. And Stellantis was and is currently probably the worst that I've ever had to work for. But it was difficult with Stellantis. It was hard. I don't know where I'm going with this. I lost my train of thought.
Let me ask, did your advisors have to, this is just a random question, did your advisors have to, you remember the LOPS, labor opcodes, LOPS, they call them
Yes.
LOPS? Did
Yep.
your advisors have to record them for you, like write your
No.
story for you? Okay, so in the
No.
Chrysler dealership
So-
I worked in, that's what I had to do. That was nuts.
Right. So actually, that was another thing that kind of upset me. On flat rate, I was submitting my own warranty claims, doing my own 70% sheets, and also managing training for all the other technicians as well on flat rate. So that's kind of why I needed to be on that system, because I was doing so much
Yeah.
more than just flat rate technician stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, Kevin, I think we've talked about this too on your show about how a foreman ought to be paid. I know that I think, Kevin, you do like a flat rate kind of system with your foreman that probably works for you, but it's my position, like in a larger dealership especially, like I've always believed that the foreman should not be a working foreman. They should be strictly like a leadership, quality control kind of a role. That's the way I've seen it work best in a large, and I'm talking like 36 plus technician environment as far as the foreman goes.
Yeah, in my shop, Jason Spencer, who is 10% owner, he gets, I'll just say he gets between $500 and $800 a week. I'm not going to give up the number. His paycheck starts there. Why is that? I expect him to go out and help these young guys because I have young guys, right? I have a C Tech and a B Tech, so they need training. So I don't expect him to be on flat rate going out there and being interrupted all the time to help the guy. So I said, okay, listen, I'm going to pay you your flat rate hour times X amount of hours, your paycheck, you're going to walk in the door. We'll just say, for argument's sake, your paycheck starts at $1,000. That's going to cover you helping all these young guys when they keep interrupting. It's not going to affect your paycheck. That's how I do it. Now, I'm a 4-guy shop, right? So it's a lot easier for me to say that, but I take into consideration that guy's going to be interrupted 10 times a day.
Sure.
Okay, time is worth money. So I have no problem investing in these younger guys. Now, my youngest guy, and they're going to say I'm full of shit online, but here we go. My youngest guy who's on flat rate makes $45 an hour flat rate. I know MasterTechs at some of these dealers around here that don't even make $45 an hour flat rate. Now, I can afford to do that because I know where to price my stuff. So it doesn't matter to me that I pay the guy $45 an hour. He makes a good living. And his average, I looked it up, his average is 33 hours a week right now. Okay. Now, he's functional, but he still needs a lot of training. He's got some ASE certs, he's got some state certs, but he needs training. So he's getting paid really well, a good wage. I'm investing in him. I told him you can never leave. He said, I don't plan on leaving. He's like, you yell at everybody, but you're nice too. He's like, when we do something wrong, you tell us we have our head up our ass, we're being dumb. That's just the way you are, but you're nice to us. You buy us lunch, you pay us well. Okay.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of shops that do that. These guys are so worried about their money because they don't make enough money because they don't know how to run their numbers. Okay. That's where a lot of the leadership comes in, I believe. Is I was talking to Jeff the other night, the JD Mechanics Saturday night, and he said, he was talking about the dealership. She's like, I don't know. These guys call me and say, I'm an A Tech at a dealership. I make this, but I think I want to leave the dealership world and go to the independent world. He's like, I'm kind of stuck. He said, because I look at the independent shops, these are shitty operators. They don't run their shops well. So these guys are going to go to the dealership where they might be getting abused, but making a decent living, to going down to a guy that can't afford to pay him or has no business to pay him because he can't afford marketing. So it's a whole big mess going on, honestly. And it all comes down to on the independent side, in my opinion, it's not even in my opinion, it's a fact. A lot of these independent shops don't price their stuff right because they didn't even know. So they can't pay their guys right. And they expect their trap is, I agree with Dustin and Chris, is their trap is to get these guys in here and pay them flat rate. Well, for slow this week, I don't have payroll. Okay. That's a stupid ass outlook. And no wonder all these technicians are pissed. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit of a thing here. We talked about the tie rod nut being loose, right? You got these flat rate guys that going, I'm not getting paid. I'm not touching the nut. We all agreed that I thought it was a safety issue. It made me mad. I'm never going to discount the fact that I said that. It pissed me off. He did have his head up his ass. But my guys, every one of them, when I talked to them about that again this morning, because they seen the post over the weekend, like, what'd you think? I said, I really don't care, honestly, what anybody says on the internet. But who here would not tighten that nut up and put the cotter key in? Everybody's like, all of us would, even on flat rate, because I don't want somebody to get killed. And, but I can understand why some of these guys have the attitude they do from the dealership when they're like, just rotate these tires for free. Because, Chris, I think you talked about it where the service advisor comes out there and goes, hey, just get this oil change done for me for free. Yeah, but I'm going home. It's my daughter's birthday party. Nah, come on, bro. Hook me up this time and do it. Then the guy stays and he's late to the birthday party and he lives at the dealership. I know a guy that my dad was plugged into one of the big dealer groups. He's a VP. And the guy that took over his job, they were going to have a meeting and they said, where do you want to go with your career? Do you want to move up the ladder and start doing more and more stuff? He said, absolutely not. I do not want to be a fixed ops director or anything. I like my family. I want to spend time with my kids. I am not spending $80 or 80 hours a week at a dealership and selling my soul and missing my family's life. Money is not that important to me. Unfortunately, not everybody's like that. But you got to admit, there is a big shift in the dealer since COVID. You can't get guys to stay Tuesday and Thursday nights till 9 o'clock at night working. That shit ain't happening anymore.
I disagree with that because I was one of them.
What?
I worked nonstop after COVID trying to get my paycheck. I had 2 kids.
Around us, none of them are late anymore.
Really, that's crazy. So that was another thing. So like I was working late at the dealership and I was doing transmissions on the side, so that I could get the money that I needed to live the way that I needed, especially when it got slow. I was making more money on the side than I was at the dealer. And I tell people that and they're like, that's crazy. But I mean, like I think I did my taxes one year. I made $99,000 at the dealer and I'd made $120,000 on the side, just in side work. Like it was good money that I was doing on the side. And I was always working. I missed so much with the family. My wife tells me that I'm on Dustin time because I'll tell her I'll be another hour or two, and 4 hours later, I'm rolling in the door. But you get to working and you start to get productive and you're chasing that dollar and you just lose track of time.
I will say on the working late front, in my experience, and I worked in 2 different regions. So I worked in the South and I worked in the Northeast. So 2 different regions, luxury, non-luxury. I worked import and domestic. So I've got a range of experience across the 4 dealerships I worked in. I actually never, that I recall, I never experienced a technician working late personally. I had technicians that would show up before we opened to knock something out real quick so their bay was empty when we start the day at like say 7. But in my experience, Dustin, yours is probably different. Sounds like it is. In my experience, the advisors had to show up and work 11 hours a day, and the technicians would show up about an hour after the advisors and leave an hour before the advisors. So the technicians actually worked less total physical hours in the shop as compared to the advisor staff, and that's actually consistent across every dealership I ever worked in. So I don't know what your experience is with that.
So, I mean, yeah, so normally we would work like a 7 to 6 shift typically, or like if you needed to roll in later. I never worked like in town. I usually worked like an hour away, because where I live in town, the economy is not great, and neither are the dealers. So, I usually traveled. But at the dealerships that I was working late, I was never the only one. There was always me and usually maybe like one of the younger guys that, just starting out or whatever, they're working late on something. But yeah, I mean, the advisors did work long hours. I'll give them that, but they didn't really have the physical strain that the technicians have on a daily basis. I'll be honest with that one.
No,
So,
they didn't. They had the mental strain though. That's what I
sure.
always say is when we
Yeah.
compare the two roles, it's apples and oranges. It's just a different kind of difficult. As somebody that's done
Right.
both, right? I've been the advisor and I've been a technician. And there's mental strain on the technician side. Don't get me wrong. There's horrible statistics that we could talk about there. But it's just a different job altogether. So when we compare the two and this one and that one, it's just, to me personally, it's kind of a waste of time because they're such drastically different jobs.
Sure. I can tell you from like my business owner experience, I would much rather be talking to people and selling work than actually working on the cars. I'm not going to lie, because my back is destroyed. You know, I'm 33 and I have back issues like nobody's business. You know what I mean? I feel like if you can talk to people, it's really not that bad. If you're good at communicating with people and keeping them updated and everything. I mean, occasionally you have the customers that are just like ridiculous to deal with, but for the most part, it's really not all that bad in my experience.
Yeah, no, and I concur with that. On the customer side, the customers are the variable, right? We never know how a customer is going to be from a day to day, and you get that thick skin. But on the advisor side, just like the technician side, you got to have that support system in place. You got to have technicians that are willing to provide you with the updates when you need them, or if a part doesn't come in, the parts department lets you know so that you can react accordingly for your customer. And in my experience, sometimes that was an issue I'd run into where it just didn't feel like the rest of the service team was supporting me because like the buck always falls on the advisor, right? That's the person that's going to take a hit when there's a bad CSI situation, an angry customer situation, a customer showing up for a vehicle that's not fixed situation. So it's the advisor that's going to have to work on that and figure that out. I can tell you, I had plenty of technicians, and when I say this, I gotta say, preface this, I think that like 89% of the technicians out there are really good at what they do, but there's still that percentage out there that are like the hacks, right? We know they exist. And there were certain technicians I'd sell work for that I would just be nervous to like say, "Hey, my technician recommended a purge valve on this one," because I knew it was coming. That technician would come back and say, "Hey, it wasn't the purge valve, it's actually this, and it's going to be an additional $1,000, and we couldn't have known this unless we replaced the purge valve." Me, who knows automotive technology, knows they're full of it. That's not accurate at all. That they just kind of like took a stab in the dark at this thing and then actually diagnosed. I had one technician that would actually make recommendations on a vehicle based on the customer complaint without even knowing what color the vehicle was yet, and would make a recommendation to have me sell it and then fix it for real after the fact. So he got to do a repair, then a diagnostic, and then another repair. I saw that several times. And again, that's something that somebody should be looking at this going, the hell's happening here? And then fixing that right away.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
let's talk about service advising. Dustin, you said something that's interesting, and I'm going to say service advising in your own shop, talking to your own customers, is a hell of a lot different than doing it at the dealer, because you kind of make your own rules. Dustin, you have nobody to answer to. When you have something happen at your shop, a transmission problem, a mad customer, something, you kind of make your own rules, right? So it's a little bit less stressful to you to deal with the customer versus having a whole set of dealer rules because your CSI score dictates a big, you're giving away a big chunk of your money if you don't make them happy, even though you possibly did everything you could, but the guy's just an a-hole or a difficult customer versus, you looking at a guy going, "Yep, I forgot to do this. I forgot this. I'll make it right and I'll take care of it." And you go and make it right, which you seem like that type of guy. And I do the same thing. But I honestly, I've been in this business for 39 years, and I've service road. I've done it all. I've been a tech, and I wouldn't want to work at a dealership. Number one, I don't have the personality. We all know that. But to try to be a service advisor in the dealership, then you get a bad score and they take $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 from your paycheck. How could you not have a bad attitude, honestly, as a service advisor, as a tech, or anything? So wouldn't you guys agree that the rules they put are almost like unobtainable unless you're kissing ass the whole time and working like a dog at the dealership? Then the manufacturer's coming and going, "Yeah, and by the way, Bobby over there in the shop ran his mouth and all these guys did on TikTok. So guess what? Now all them Triton manifolds you're doing for 1.3, now they're 0.6. Like, it just doesn't seem like the whole thing's doable. Like Ronald Reagan said, what cannot go on will not go on. And that makes a lot of sense. How long is this shit show going to go on at the dealers? From the CEO says everybody should be making $120,000. The only thing I've seen that just pissed everybody off. All the techs that are making money, the dealers going, "Yo, where's my 120?"
Yeah.
Like,
I have a friend. He works for Ford currently. I'm not going to name who he is, but he's going to watch this. He'll see it. And he's like, I don't know where. He's like, I have to work, 14 hours a day. He's like, I do make that, but I constantly work. He's got no kids, no responsibilities. He's just always at the dealership. He has a key so that he can go in there and work on the off hours. That is how he obtained his $120,000. Now, if you have kids and a family and responsibilities and maybe a hobby or something, that's not realistic, in my opinion. Now, you had said as a shop owner, service advising, you don't really have anybody to answer to. I sort of disagree with that. Now, as far as like my management, I don't have anybody to answer to. And people say, oh, it must be nice to be self-employed. You don't have, you can do whatever you want. I'm like, well, I have every single one of my customers is kind of like my boss. It's a temporary boss. And I have to answer to these people every single day, whether they're happy or upset, whatever. So I have a bunch of little bosses temporarily that I have to make happy. And unfortunately, people are crazy. And you can't make anybody happy. You could do everything perfect. You can, ask them, hey, are you happy with the service? Is the car fixed? And the car's fixed. It was fixed in the timeline and the price was right. And they come back and they give you a 3-star review for whatever reason. And then you call them and they're like, well, I don't give 5-star reviews to anybody. That's just how people are sometimes. I don't agree with the survey system. I feel like that is a huge crutch for service advisors. I definitely don't agree with that.
Yeah, so let's put a pin in I want to talk about surveys, but I want to go back to, I want to push a little bit, Dustin, on that. So when you're the advisor and the owner, the operator of your own system, I think the point Kevin was making is that you have the ability to make a call and move forward with whatever you see fit. Now you're saying that your customer is like the boss, right? Like, for example, if somebody come back to you and you just did a coil pack and plugs in this vehicle and the check engine light's back on and is flashing and it did not get fixed, like what would your response to that be? What would your next step be in that situation?
I would tell them obviously that I'm going to take care of it. I'll pull the car in, diagnose it, and figure out what I did wrong.
Okay, so now take that same exact answer. You're now a dealership advisor. I'm your manager, and I'm saying, yeah, we'll do that, but we're going to do it tomorrow. Tell them that they have to leave it with us.
I have actually, I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. Okay. I run a transmission shop. I currently have a comeback. It was a transmission that I built a month ago and he called me and he said, hey, this thing's kind of slipping funny in 4th gear. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, bring it here and drop it off and I'll take a look at it. And he brought it here and he dropped it off. I took a look at it. I'm like, okay, something burnt up inside of it. I'm like, I don't know what happened, but I'm going to need a little bit of time because I am, one person. I'm a little backed up. I'm going to get it in. We'll tear it apart and I'll find out exactly what's going on. There's a warranty for a reason because I'm human and I'm not perfect. So it's been about 2 weeks. This car has been here and I'm still waiting on some parts. But I mean, sometimes it does take time. You can't just rush things in right away. And I feel like the expectation needs to be set for that.
So I agree with the setting of expectations, but we're comparing like an internal transmission issue to a misfire, right? It's something that we could probably diagnose pretty quickly if we just look at it. This is a lived experience, by the way. So, if we just did coil and plugs on a vehicle at a dealership, that's not a cheap job. We're talking probably these days like $1,500 that we're going to charge a customer, depending on where you go. That customer comes right back. I just gave you $1,500. I want you to tell me what's wrong with my car, and I want a loaner vehicle, and I want you to fix it. All this kind of stuff. And as the advisor, you want to fix that for your customer, and you're being told by your management structure, well, hey, I'm not making any of my guys look at it today. It'll be tomorrow. And sometimes that just doesn't work, right? Sometimes we have
not for a misfire. I mean, some like you said, a
point.
Misfire would be pretty quickly diagnosed.
Yeah. And so that's the point I think Kevin was trying to make, is that sometimes your management and your leadership and sometimes your technicians as well work against you as the advisor, and you're struggling on juggling between policy and procedure that's not often all well put together, and customer expectations and managing things that we messed up for customers. And it's very hard to get those two things to meet in the middle when you're an advisor at a larger shop, at the whim of customer versus manager versus technician.
Well, sure, you're the middleman.
Yeah. And I believe, honestly, at my shop, when we have a comeback or that comes back pretty quick or the next day, they're first in line. When it shows back up, it gets pulled right back in. And the reason why, in my opinion, I always tell them, because it shows the person that you're invested. Okay. Oh my God, what happened? The check engine light's on. Let me pull that right in. Okay. We've done that. And then I'm like, hey, it's going to take us a minute. We obviously missed something. And I'm truthful. Like, I tell them the same thing Dustin said. We're human. Okay. There's a lot of things going against us here. And we pull it in, we check it out. A couple times I've got them rental cars. A couple times, we've kept it for a week and it's cost me money. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to buy their car from them. I'm like, yeah, I've given refunds and said, we've screwed it up. Let me give you the refund and we'll start over. Just a lot of different things. But my point to that is you can pivot on your heel when you're your own boss. And I made a mistake too. I do answer to my wife because, she knows how to run a shop better than I do. Just
I was
ask her.
going to say that too. I told her I will not allow you to work with me because anytime she comes in here, she walks in here like she owns the place. And I was like, I don't think so. This is my kingdom.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I talk about when talking about communication training and leadership is I always say that listen and silent are spelled with the same letters, meaning you have to listen effectively to communicate effectively. And when my wife, whenever she sees my post, she'll watch the whole thing to help me with the algorithm and that sort of thing. And she'll watch those posts where I talk about effective listening and how to be a better listener. And then she'll look me right in the eye and say, what the hell is this? Because I'm not that great of a listener at home sometimes. So she really calls me on that every now and again. So yeah, no, my wife is also very involved in these sort of things as well. So I definitely answer to that.
I get we get in the car after we go to a family function or something. We get in the car and I'm driving along. I just feel the heat. And I look at her, she's like, did you really have to say that? I'm like, yeah, kinda. So I get in all kinds of trouble. I'm sure Dustin does too, and you do too. I think a lot of it's funny, but I think a lot of it too. I was on commission as a tech at Hale's Auto Clinic, and I remember when I wasn't making enough money, I would be there till 9 or 10 o'clock at night working by myself. I was the heavy guy doing engines. Um, I grew up on a farm, so we worked a lot anyway, so I was used to it, but when I was talking about the dealerships making these guys work late, they literally used to have service hours till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night and make these guys do it. Well, after COVID, all the dealers around us, the technicians got together and said, we're not doing this anymore. They had to change their hours. Now that's Farmington Hills, Novi area. And I think all the techs just basically gave it up and it kind of went through all the shops, which I thought that was good for the pushback because as well as I do, how effective are guys after 6 o'clock when they've been there since 7 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
They're tired.
Yeah, I've always said this. It's crazy that back in I don't know history that well, but in the 60s somewhere, everybody fought for the 8-hour workday, and now we're all just working 12 hours regardless nowadays. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Nobody is effective after that 8-hour mark, day after day, and nobody's effective once they're hitting that 50 to 60 to 70 plus hours a week in a shop, week after week after week after week. Much more effective. It's actually studies have shown that when you work on say a 410, you do 40 hours Monday through Thursday, you actually get more work done from an efficiency standpoint than if you're in the shop or wherever for 50 hours until Friday.
I agree with that. And my shops run 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. There's no overtime at all, ever. Period. We do not do it. We don't work weekends. And the reason why, I'll tell you, my old boss that owned Garrett Auto and Truck, we had a fleet Nabisco cookies. We worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for that fleet. And once I realized that we made no more money because we paid it all out in overtime, and my guys looked like freaking, I was one of the guys that had to go work on these trucks. They looked like they were going to die. I realized after I bought the shop, I'm like, if I can't figure out how to make enough money in 40 hours and let these guys have a life outside of here, then I'm doing something wrong as a business owner. And how I came up with the 7 to 4, anybody that knows Detroit between Farmington Hills and Howell, where all my guys live, they had 96 tore up for the last 3 years. I mean, some days it would take us 2 hours to get home, and it's a half-hour ride.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I said, my guys are like, this is crazy. We're leaving at 5. We're getting home at 7, 7:38. I said, well, why don't we change our hours 7 to 4? And they're like, let's do that for the summer. Then they realize that they can go home and still have a life. So I'm like, well, you guys can come in at 7 and leave at 4. I'm cool with that. And I thought, man, is this going to piss all the customers off? The customers, the joke was, why do you guys leave at 4? I said, because you'd really be bitching if we left at 3. I just really told them that. And they would laugh. But our hours are for a medium and heavy duty truck and auto repair shop. We work 7 to 4 Monday through Friday. And guys cannot believe that I have them hours. But my thought is, I want my guys to have a life outside of work, and I don't want them to be broken someday when I sell or retire or whatever I do. I look at the guys like my old boss that sold his business. These guys worked for this guy for 20 years. An investment group bought him. He never said anything to anybody. Walked in one Tuesday morning and goes, hey, meet your new boss. I'm out of here. I sold the place. Take care. Thank you for everything, and left. Me, that right there is a moral problem for me. I just don't think I could do that to my guys. So I want everybody to be happy and make a lot of money, and I charge a lot of money. We're known to be expensive, but my guys are very well taken care of. And I just think the dealer model is broken with the hours they expect people to work and how they expect these poor people to pull on the customer's wallet all the time while they're smiling and saying, "Can you give me a 5-star review? Because you are happy, right? That I just tried to sell you every warranty under the sun." I mean, the finance office is like the freaking pit of doom, isn't it? They call them lock them in the finance office. It's crazy. I know we're getting off topic of repair, but I kind of trying to paint the picture. The dealership is a mess. That model is broken, and Tesla proved it. Their guys are hourly. All their information's online. Everybody's happy when you go to the Tesla dealer because nobody's on commission. Not even their salespeople. They get bonuses as they deliver cars fast. I told you they called me on my wife's car. They said, "Hey, it's a holiday weekend." I'm like, "Yeah, it's like Sunday. Like, you want to pick up your car?" I go, "We're not supposed to pick it up to Tuesday." They go, "Yeah, but we get a bonus when we deliver it to you faster. Do you want us to bring it to your house?" I'm like, "No, we can come down there." That was Sunday. The guy's like, "I had nothing else to do." And but you know what I mean? That was a guy that wanted the bonus. He wasn't forced. I thought that was pretty cool how they handle that.
Yeah, that's something to talk. And Dustin, I'm curious your thoughts on that. So, as you know, when dealerships sell new or used vehicles, they also try to sell additional products like service contracts, for example, things that cover maintenance, things that cover repairs. Maybe it's a powertrain warranty, an extended warranty, usually a third party. Your experience, Dustin, with that, what do you think? Like when you work with these companies, these extended warranty companies, as a dealer tech?
I absolutely hated it, and let me tell you why. So I worked for a dealer that they actually owned the warranty company that they sold with their vehicles, and we got a ton of work from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Not a conflict of interest at all. So what would happen is, let's say a car comes in for a repair, we quote it out, and they're only going to cover, I don't know, $100 an hour, and we quoted 10 hours, but they're only going to pay us 8 hours. Okay. Now, normally, like at least what I do and what I've heard a lot of other people do, customers responsible for the difference, right? Would you agree to that?
So yes, let me just tell you what the general policy that I've experienced with that is, because you're right. So if the dealership did not sell, in my experience, if the dealership did not sell the program, then we would make the customer cover the difference. If the dealership did sell it, we would actually do exactly what the warranty company told us to do.
That is what I'm getting at. So we were forced to fix these cars for a discounted rate because we sold the warranty company.
Yeah, and so and to just talk from the advisor side of that, like how these claims, because I've done probably thousands of these claims. They one of the first questions they ask you is what labor and time guide your shop uses, Mitchell, All Data, whatever it is. And then they actually use that system to pull the flat rate times for what they're going to pay the technician. So they pull customer pay times from the labor and time guides. I understood this, and I, with my former experience, knew how to communicate to them what to pull off of those systems, like All Data, for example. What I noticed, and this is just a general message out there to technicians, what I noticed is most advisors, they don't have that technical expertise and background. So as a technician, the more information you provide your advisor in those situations, the more they can tell the warranty company to pull. Like, for example, just saying, "Hey, we need a pre and post test drive," gets you an additional hour on most contracts. So really a lot of it is training. What, as an advisor, am I supposed to tell this company so that they go into the labor and time guide, pull the appropriate flat rate time to present to their technician? 9 times out of 10, Dustin, working with certain companies, like CarShield was always a disaster, right? But certain companies out there that I worked with, I was able to actually get my technician sometimes an extra 7/10 to a full hour on top of what they originally wanted, because I knew what to say to the company so they'd pull the right labor ops and actually pay my technicians properly. So there's a training issue there. I really think that with advisors that just don't know how to communicate with those, and with technicians too, because they have to communicate to their advisors and tell them exactly what they need and why, not just, "Hey, it needs a PCM and walking away." Like, tell them a little bit more to get you paid. It's kind of like when you document your 3 C's on your repair order, right in your story, like what you document is what you get paid on. So there's a little bit of that in there, on the service contract side, because they do pull customer pay times.
Right. There was a couple of instances, like independently, that I would tell them where I'm getting my times from, and they'll take both, like All Data and ProDemand, and they'll pick the least one. because there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the two.
There is.
Big
I'm
time
pretty,
right now.
at least in my opinion, I think Pro Demand probably pays better. But I've not used all that a whole lot, but just from I've worked at other shops that have had both, and it seems that Pro Demand is a little bit better as far as technician pay and hours and whatnot. But yeah, I agree with that. I wrote books when I had to write stories for warranty companies. Okay, I wrote books. I would listen. I understand. Like when you're a flat rate technician at a dealership, you have to write everything you did, detailed. Okay, and you're not getting, if you're trying to justify straight time or what you did under warranty, if it goes outside of the labor op and you want to, OLH is what GM called it, you have to write a book. You have to be really good at communicating what you did to that car, or you're not getting paid. But even then, sometimes it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So when you said if the dealership sold that warranty, Dustin, you guys were expected to take a hit on the labor if it came back? As far as they're going to have you doing a warranty time if the dealership sold the warranty you worked at?
Right. Okay. So the perfect example I'll give you is I did exhaust manifolds on a Ford E350. And I don't know if you've ever had to do those, but I will never do another one again. Never. I will not do that job. And it was through an extended warranty company. All of the bolts were rusted. You can't get your hand in there. I couldn't physically touch the bolts in the very front of the engine. It was just a nightmare job. So, being in the Rust Belt, there was, the time that it said in the system, this is the time. It was like, I don't know, 6 hours. Let's just say 6 hours for whatever. I was like, all right, I may have to extract some bolts. I'm going to add 2 hours to it for both sides, right? So I'm adding a little bit of time because I know it's going to take me longer because everything is seized together at that point. And I go back to the advisor. I explain to them, hey, everything is seized. The bolts are rusted. The manifolds are cracked. This all needs done. But unfortunately, the extended warranty is not going to cover the extra time. They're going to go straight off the book time. This is what it is. So we get cut, right? And that was kind of my experience with a lot of different things that we did.
Yeah, and I'll speak to the advisor side of that as well, Kevin. So yes, in my experience, when the dealership sold the program to the customer, I was expected to give them not only a discount on the flat rate side, but a discount on the dollar per flat rate hour side. So say our door rate's $250, they would only pay $150. And that hurt my paycheck, that hurt Dustin's paycheck. On the flat rate side, there was a little bit more you could work with, like again, like with the bolts breaking thing, I've had success with certain companies of getting them to pay an extra half hour for every broken bolt or something like that. I know typically we try to do an hour, but there's some rescue things you can do in there as an advisor to help with that. But overall, yeah, in my experience, and I guess Dustin's as well, is when the dealership sells the program, there's a discounted rate that we're expected to do, which is fine. But when you have employees that are paid off of those metrics, it's kind of like everybody takes a hit to some degree.
Right, except for the front of the house that made the uptick on the whole program in the beginning.
And that's where they make their money, right? That's the back end of the sale.
Right,
That's where the profit is. Yeah.
Yeah,
how
we
much
do.
You sell that for $3,000.
Yeah, we do a lot of Triton exhaust manifolds, where they're kind of paring down though.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. We have a disclaimer written that per stud, 1 hour per stud. If it breaks, to drill it out. Period. And we asked that up front. It was one of my posts. Everybody was bitching at me about it. It's like, listen,
That's how I've always
miserable
done
job.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've always
Dustin
sold
just
those
said
jobs
it's
that
a
way.
miserable job. Like nobody wants to do the job, so we would double. If the thing was not super rusty, we would just add some time to labor. But if it's like a rusty mess, we double labor per side. It'd be 10 hours labor to iron out the manifolds plus an hour per stud that's broken. And if they don't want to do it, they don't have to. But you got to get your guys paid for stuff like that. You know as well as I do, it's going to take the guy a day and a half to get it actually done. So he's got to get paid for it. Let's switch over to diagnostic work, because that seems to be a big fight here for flat rate. I get these guys on my posts. They're like, the truck or the car's been at several different shops. They've spent all their money. Then they bring it to me, and I spend a day and a half of my time figuring it out, and I get screwed. And my thought was, when I said that, I said, you have a terrible service advisor, because you should have pre-sold X amount of labor up front and said, hey, this car's been everywhere. We have to kind of go through the basics to see what everybody else has done to kind of get to fix their problems if there's any. So we're going to start out with 4 hours. We're going to use 4 hours of your time, X amount of dollars. When we get to the end of that, we'll have an answer for you. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it'll be bad, but if we need more time, we'll call you. How would you guys handle that?
I would say that that's exactly how I would handle it, especially if it's been at other places. But if the car is under warranty, the story is just a little bit different.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's again. So you're right, Kevin. That's a service advisor issue all day long. It's also potentially a technician issue to a certain degree. Like if a technician goes over the first hour by 30 minutes to an hour without telling anybody, it's kind of on the technician for not asking for that additional time. So there's some responsibility on both sides, but on the advisor side, you always want to set the expectation on any diagnostic. It doesn't even matter if it's like a very obvious, like a misfire, like I know my tech will figure it out in 45 minutes. You still want to say, hey, listen, this is the diagnostic fee. It covers the first hour of labor. Our technician will get up to that point. If we have an answer for you, I'll let you know. If not, there might be a situation where we start chasing wires, doing some stuff. At that point, I will have to pause and then ask you for additional time on that, which would be an additional cost. You set those expectations up front. And if the customer's not cool with that, you saved yourself a headache by that customer not doing business with you. But most times, 9 times out of 10, believe it or not, your customers are going to be cool with that. I've actually sold up to 4 different diagnostics on one ticket for a technician at a time because they had a transmission issue and an engine issue and some other issue and electrical, and it was different departments and everything. So I had to sell that all that time. So it really comes down to the advisor selling proper time for their technician. And when that technician is going over that time, raising their hand and saying, hey, I need that additional time. So it kind of plays both ways, but either way, we got to have that communication line open, and we have to be setting those expectations with that customer. And there is no situation, in my opinion, where we should spend 6 hours of unpaid time on a vehicle to find out what's wrong with it, especially when we don't even know if the customer is going to pay to repair it.
What would I tell you? What would you say if I told you that some independent shop owners expect these flat rate guys to do it? Because I've had this conversation with these
Yeah.
guys. And I'm like, you know what? For you going out there as a technician on flat rate, you can't complain that you're getting taken advantage of if you're going to go out there and do it. You might want to push back a little bit or maybe find a new place to work. If your boss expects you to work X amount of hours for free, okay? Now, I'm sure people are going to see this podcast and be like, this is a guy that expected the guy to tighten the tie rod nut up and put a cotter key in for free. That's a whole different thing. Now,
Yeah.
at my shop, it's an hour per concern, except for diesel engine work. Check engine light on a diesel engine is 2 hours, and it's 2 hours up front for a transmission. Because we all know you have to road test it,
Yep.
you have to check the fluid, you have to
Yep.
get it up to speed on the transmission, put the scan tool on. The diesels are the same way. 9 times out of 10, we could diagnose both of these in a couple hours, so the customer, doesn't get taken advantage of. Very, very rarely do we quadruple, charge people for diagnosing stuff like that. Some of these diesels we run into, I don't know how much you're into the diesel realm, Dustin, but some of these things come in and they've been programmed. So it might take you a minute or two to figure they got a hot tune on. And you're like, I can't fix your transmission. I can't fix anything. I don't even know what the guy did to this thing. He's got this code blocked and this code blocked. Like, I can't even talk to it. And that's a
Yeah,
whole different thing.
A lot of the time, I do a lot of performance diesel trans builds. That is actually my bread and butter currently. I do a lot of them. And what you'll find is, I would say 90% of the diesel trucks are tuned. They've got some sort of tuner on them. And a lot of the time, if the tune's not right, it's going to destroy the trans. And that's,
Yep.
yeah, I've dealt with it a lot.
And it's tough. And how do you sit there? You're going to have to put a huge liability waiver in there going, hey, you got your boost here. You have your fuel pressure jacked up. You have all this. I'm going to do my best to build this transmission. If you go out there and do hole shots with it and do this and break the tail shaft housing off it and kick drive shafts out of it, there's no warranty. That's the problem with performance work with these guys. They go to the sand dunes and jump the truck and break stuff. And they're like, I didn't do anything. And then you see them on Facebook in the Silver Lake sand dunes. It happened to one of my guys that he has a business at his house. He put a transfer case gasket between a trans and transfer case, and it started leaking. And all the bolts a couple of bolts were broken, and he brought it back to him. And he's like, Jason called me. He's like, man, he's like, these bolts are broken. He's like, I torqued them. I'm like, man, there has to be more to the story. I don't know. Well, he's like all bent out of shape, does the job. The guy MFs him, right? The kid's dad comes and gets all over him and everything. And just so happened, Jason's all upset about it. He's sitting at lunch and we're in the Silver Lake Sand Dunes. Guy's up there. There's the freaking truck going over Test Hill, like before he brought it back to us. So it's like, that was kind of a weird one. And it's just like, people drive you nuts, the stuff they do, and they lie about. So that then we show the dad and he just wants to kill the kid and he pays and everything's good. But imagine if you didn't see that picture. That's one of them unknowns. Like you know what I mean? What happens? Because you've been there, Dustin. I know if you're talking about guys with tuned diesels and transmission, I'm sure you have stories as long as your arm about it wasn't me.
Well, there was
know?
when the Hellcats first came out, the Hellcat engines. There was this guy. He came in and he had lost his crank pulley and it destroyed everything. And I was like, it looks like this was like a high RPM pulley loss. It destroyed so much stuff. And somehow one of the advisors found a video of this guy taking that thing down the track. And because we had that video, they voided his warranty and said they weren't fixing it. Chrysler did. This was Fiat Chrysler. It wasn't Stellantis, but that kind of stuff happens all the time. I mean, and people, like, when they abuse their vehicles and it breaks, they will not tell you the truth. They won't, because it's under warranty, whatever.
And it's hilarious how obvious it is too, because like I had Mustangs that would come in and like their rear axle would just be in shambles, and they're like, "No, I don't hot rod it at all." And meanwhile, they have 0 tread depth on the rear and like 12 tread depth on the front. It's like, obviously you do what you say you don't do. I was going to tell this story actually. I told 2 different stories. I was recording content before this. I had a customer come in one time. The running boards, the automatic running boards, especially on Fords, get stuck, right? They get stuck down or stuck up, or one's down. They suck. They absolutely suck. But anyways, one comes in with a bungee cord holding it back on, and there's like mud clumps all underneath the vehicle, and he said it just fell off and it should be covered under warranty. I'm like, this is very obviously something that hit a ditch or something, and therefore is not covered under warranty, because brackets don't just shear off, right? They might break and like bind, but they don't shear off. And like, the customer tried so hard to convince us that this thing just fell off of the vehicle. I mean, he didn't even take it through a car wash before bringing it in. So dealing with that kind of stuff is absolutely wild. If I were to write a warranty ticket on that and put it in front of my technician, I'd have been laughed out of the building, right? So there's again, on the advisor front, like sometimes you're blocking that stuff so your technician doesn't even have to deal with it. Like the radio concerns, like how many phone syncing issues have we dealt with in the dealership? They're ridiculous. As an advisor, you need to be trained to be able to just repair that in the service lane, because sometimes it's just a user issue, like the customer just doesn't know what they're doing. So you can actually weed those out so your technician isn't wasting their time on a warranty ticket to reprogram a phone situation. So stupid.
So I got one that's just, I got one that's going to sound really stupid, but I'm going to bring it up because somebody in the dealer world needs to hear this. How does people feel about pizza parties, guys? Pizza parties, like they really think they're doing something when they buy pizza for these guys. I hear all kinds of jokes about the pizza parties. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
So I can tell you from personal experience, there was a point in time, actually this time of year, this time of year is bad for technicians. Okay. Especially the dealer life. It's slow. Usually, it's the most expensive time of year because of Christmas and everything. And this is my story. I was working at a dealership and we were having our monthly meeting. They were talking about record breaking profits, and they bought us pizza. Oh, we got record breaking profits this year, you guys. Everything's been great. Every month, you guys are doing amazing. And I walked back to my toolbox with my pizza, and my electric had been shut off. So I was on the phone trying to get my electric paid, and I had to borrow money because I didn't have enough money to pay my electric. Like so like the pizza party thing kind of makes me mad because like they have record breaking profits, times are tough, and we're not flagging hours. It was a dealership wide deal. And we just weren't doing well. Morale in the shop was not great, and they threw us a pizza party. So I was just a little frustrated.
Yeah.
And it was always like that.
Yeah, there's definitely a timing tact with it. So like if there's a pizza party somewhere I work, it has to be meat lovers or Hawaiian. Otherwise I'm not there, period. But actually I have a story. So we did a pizza party one time at a dealership, and what they did is we had a 2 2 bay service lanes. So like where you pull your vehicle in and park it, it's where the service advisors work. And they actually blocked off the entrance doors on the inside of the service lane with just a very large table full of pizzas. I mean, we're trying to feed like 36 plus people here. Well, they didn't turn off the bay doors. So while they're serving this pizza and everyone's trying to enjoy like this lunch, the bay doors open up and customers are trying to pull in. So they're pulling their front ends up against the table that's holding all the pizza. So then all of us employees, the advisors primarily, had to move the tables out of the way. We had to really hurry up and eat it or set it aside and go straight back to work because the business never ends. So you got to time it properly from an operational standpoint. And then you have to time it properly. Like, if I do a pizza party right now, am I going to upset a bunch of people that feel like they're not making money and they don't like working here? Like, you have to there has to be some tact with it, right? Also, like, it's so memed. I would just stay away from it altogether, to be honest.
We're getting city barbecue, guys.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
No pizza.
That's kind of what Dustin pretty much said is pretty much what I've heard. And, and now that I remember something, we were talking about that, on that podcast, me and you, Chris, and one of the things Dustin talked about me saying when I walk by people, I could see they're down and stuff like that and their production's down. I want to add the rest of that story. That would have been if they had a personal problem, I would have walked over and go, hey, what's going on? My electric got shut off. There's been times where I've pulled $200 or $300 out of my pocket and gave it to my guys because to see them upset for whatever reason, some of it, let's be completely clear, is on their own stupid financial decisions. He's got a new remote control car from the Macco man, but he can't pay. You can't pay his Edison bill, right? Okay.
Right.
Them guys I really didn't invest in, but say something happened where, like right now I have the guy that was supposed to come on my podcast after you guys talk about the tie rod thing. He had a baby and his baby's sick there at the hospital. So he said, hey, he called me last night. He's like, hey, I'm not coming in tomorrow. I'm still at the hospital. Then I messaged him. I said, hey, what's going on? He said, well, it's not looking good. I'm going to probably be off the rest of the week. Don't worry about it. Take care of your kid. I'll cover you. Okay. I'll pay the guy because he's a young kid and he goes out on a limb for me. Do I have to pay him? Absolutely not. But my thought as a business owner, if that kid's sitting in the hospital thinking he can't pay his bills and his baby's sick, that just doubles down on him. Is it really going to change my financial situation paying him for the week? Absolutely not. I'm going to do it all day long. And that's the kind of things I think you can do when you're an independent business owner. Can you imagine going to the freaking fix op director and go, hey, Dustin, needs help paying his Edison bill. We need $800. Would you give it to him? They'd laugh. Okay. I think independent business owners, if you have people that take care of you, you need to take care of them. And sometimes, we have a rule, like if these guys have babies, we usually buy them give them a $500 gift card or get them $500 worth of gifts off their registry. Okay. That's not going to change my financial situation, but that's going to help these young kids out that work for me a lot. The kid that lives next door to me, works for me. He's the one right now he's out. I've helped him lots of times, let them use my tractor and stuff like that. I think it's important to have a good relationship with these guys. Now, we all know, and I'll state this, that, I'm still in charge of everything in the shop, but if these guys run into a snag that they can't really get themselves out of because they don't have it, they're new homeowners or new babies, I help them out. Okay. I think a lot of independent shop owners don't do that because they don't bill enough. Their profits aren't right and all that stuff. So would they do it if they could? Yes, but they don't know what to do in business. And that goes hand in hand with the technician becoming a business owner. That's two hats. And I'm sure you've learned that, Dustin, right? From going to the dealer and then all of a sudden it's your money. It gets a little bit more chaotic.
Right. So that's what I tell people. I'm like, if anything, I'm a little more stressed than when I was at the dealer because it is my money that's on the line if anything happens.
Yeah, and it gets expensive real quick, doesn't it? When you have your business and you wait till you get a bunch of employees and you start to have a bunch of different personalities in your shop and who's this and who's that. And it gets stressful. And, one thing nobody ever talks about, we're on flat rate. Actually, we're on commission. If we do a really good job as business owners, we can keep our livelihood. We can keep our house. We can keep all our cool stuff and we can pay our bills, right? If we don't do a good job, guess what we do? We lose everything. And guess what's going to happen to our technicians? They're going to go move on to somebody else and we're going to be standing there being broke. So there's a balance on all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to be profitable enough to have money in your savings account. So when stuff happens, like warranties right now, like I'm sure it took a day out of your time to pull that trans back out. There's a come back, take it all apart, figure out what's going on, whatever. It costs you time, money, everything when you could have been working on something else. Somebody's got to pay for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I try really hard not to think about it that way when I'm doing it. In my mind, I'm like, okay, I did this and I promised them that I'm going to make it right. And that's all, that's what it's all about. But yeah, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I've got a lot full of cars and I'm losing money. But I try really hard not to think about it that way.
Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, there has been, I don't remember what month it was, that every job pretty much went bad in our shop. We bought a Jasper when we were using Jasper, a 6.7 Scorpion. We started up, it blew up in the bay. You know how hard that job is, right? We had to take it back out. The second one was bad. I mean, everything we touched went to shit. And I remember that month going into our savings account and pulling money out because we did not do good enough because just everything was a mess. And it's only getting worse. Okay. I see all these posts about transmission parts, Brandon Sloan talking about these transmission parts, and these guys buying these brand new GM trucks, and these transmissions are going bad, and they're sitting in the dealer for 3 or 4 months. My wife's 6.2 GM motor blowing up after we changed the oil, spins a main bearing in the bay. Okay. Now that truck is worth half the price of what I bought it for. Nobody wants it, right? Because it's got a 6 poo in it. And GM, what about these people that have these huge car payments on these trucks and you can't get parts for them? Your technicians got time invested. The customer's making a payment for 6 months and not having a vehicle. I mean, this is nuts.
That was a big pushback I had on the first Ford CEO thing that he did, that interview he did. I did a post on it, and he said that the reason why it takes 2 weeks to get your vehicle looked at, and if it's a transmission concern or something at a Ford dealership, that is accurate. I said as much in my post. He said it's not a parts issue though. That's purely a labor issue, and I push back on that. It is not true because I handled plenty of Ford and Lincoln buybacks because Lemon Law came into place because we had a vehicle down under warranty for a verified concern for 30 plus days, which in my state, my old state, Tennessee, that qualified you for Lemon Law buyback. An investigation would ensue, the advisor would be involved, and usually that vehicle would get bought back by the manufacturer because we didn't have the part to fix it within 30 days of being down under warranty. So we dealt with the parts issues time and time and time and time again. And 9 times out of 10, the technician wouldn't get flagged on those because there was times where you just didn't get time for your diagnostic. You got paid on the repair. So a technician would diagnose a vehicle, the part would be on back order, the vehicle would get bought back by the manufacturer, the advisor would get paid $0, even though he or she had to work on that ticket for a long period of time. The technician would get paid oftentimes $0 or a very small percentage of what he would actually have earned on that ticket because we didn't get to complete the job. And that would be it. And that was a parts issue. That was my one pushback on that first interview that the Ford CEO did.
So
yeah, I definitely feel like he's out of touch.
Totally. When you're working on a job, and say you're working on a transmission job, we'll just say it's a 40-hour job, and you get halfway done with it, and it's Friday, and you go home, that's the only thing you worked on. Can you get paid for half that work? Say if the job's at 50%, will they pay you in your paycheck 50% of that job?
It depends on the dealership.
Right.
A lot of them that I've worked at, yes, you can get flagged for half the job, but then it kind of gets confusing, especially if the ticket drags out for a while. But for the majority of it, yes, they'll flag you half of it. It just depends on the management and how they run things.
Yeah, that's how I do it at my shop. If a guy is halfway done with a job, and some of our jobs, I'm not even exaggerating, they're 80 hours, right, on these trucks. So the guy works on it all week long, and Friday he's like, man, I worked on it all week long. We have a sheet. He writes it up, and it comes to payroll. Me or my wife look at it and say, okay, we're going to pay Dustin 40 hours this week, and hopefully he'll finish it next week and get his other 40 hours. That way they get a paycheck. When I was in commission at Hal's, if the customer did not pick up the job and pay for it, we didn't get paid. So I remember there's weeks where I would do an engine, and the customer wouldn't come and pick it up, and I didn't get a paycheck.
That
and
happened
that was
to
like
me.
status quo.
Yep. As an advisor, that happened to me plenty of times where here's what's crazy. Dustin, I don't know if you'll think this is crazy or not, but the first half of it is if the job never got picked up by the customer, say it's a ticket I worked on, I sold, it was like a $2,000 ticket, the customer never picks it up, that job would have to be internal, meaning the dealership would bring it down to cost and then just cover their cost on it, meaning they would pay the technician and whatever parts, unless they pull those parts out, whatever they had to do to bring it down the cost, get rid of it from a paperwork standpoint. Me as the advisor, my paycheck on that went from whatever it was going to be to zero or negative, because I've worked in dealerships where if we internaled a job line, say, Dustin, you make $30 an hour and you flag 2 hours, $60 would come out of my paycheck on that internal line and go into your paycheck. So depending on where you work and how your pay plan is set up, when we internal jobs because a customer didn't pick up their vehicle or whatever, I actually was responsible to compensate the technician as the advisor on that particular job.
Yeah, we saw that a lot, especially in Columbus, Ohio. People are notorious for leaving their vehicles at the dealerships after they approve a repair or something. But yeah, anytime we had to internal anything, I would get compensated, but they'd cost down the labor so that, it basically just paid me and that was it.
Yeah.
So
and then depending on the advisor's pay plan, they would take that hit and sometimes get a negative on there. They would get a discount or a decrease on their pay.
I'm pretty sure at that dealership they got paid on gross profit.
Yeah, the
so
house
it'd be
never
just a zero.
loses.
Yeah.
House never loses, right? It's like the casino. The house doesn't lose. It comes out of your check, Chris, goes into Dustin's check. The house doesn't pay. Chris paid Dustin. The house wins. So, Dustin, when you said before COVID, you had your shop going and stuff, you had employees. Did you pay them hourly or how did you do that? Flat rate?
Yes. So I did have employees at a shop that I had previous to COVID. I did pay them hourly. And the reason being is I did not want them to be worried about being so quick and turning hours and possibly causing issues with quality. I wanted quality over quantity when I decided to do that.
Would you do that again? Now that you know what you know, would you like to say, okay, and make sure you take care of them on flat rate?
Yeah, absolutely. I would do it again. And that's kind of where, like, I understand that, we really shouldn't be paying, 50 hours guaranteed. There has to be some sort of performance incentive, but make sure your people are taken care of. And that's kind of where I was getting at. The dealerships are not taking care of their people, especially post COVID. I would do it again, and I've been considering hiring some people. I've got some family members helping me out, and I pay them for their time. And if I were to hire more technicians, I would definitely consider paying them hourly, especially if they're learning. If I've got somebody who's learning how to help me, anytime you start a new job, they kind of guarantee your hours for a week or two. I would be willing to be like, okay, we have like 30-hour guarantee, and then whatever you flag over that, you keep. Because I know what it's like to go without a paycheck.
Yeah.
No,
I've
so
done that too.
I think you said in your recent post, Dustin, you integrate flat rate in your current setup somehow. Did I get that right from
Yes.
your? Yeah. Okay. So do you pay yourself on a flat rate or something like that?
I do, actually. Yeah. So when you have a business, your money is not business money.
Right.
Okay. So like it's separate. You have to separate your money and your personal money, business money.
Corporate
Every
bail.
job
Yep,
that
got it.
Yeah. So every single job that I quote is based off flat rate times. Okay. And I pay myself the flat rate times. Last month, I turned 188 hours by myself. So that is what I made last month. So in essence, I'm trying to make sure that I'm paying myself a decent wage, and I'm keeping track of my own efficiency and keeping my money separate from, business money, because that's the way that you're supposed to do that.
Right.
How are you structured? Are you S Corp, C Corp, LLC? What are you?
Sole proprietor, I believe.
Yeah, we need to talk after offline.
Yeah, there's
So I just got done talking to an accountant last week. So there's some things that I didn't know that I'm learning.
Yes.
Even from the previous business that I had, and I know that there's a lot of things that I need to figure out, but I'm figuring it out along the way.
Yeah. There's a lot more benefits waiting for you. And Kevin, I'm sure you'll enlighten.
Yeah. Yeah, I told Dustin anytime after he called me an asshole. Who else had the balls to call me an asshole online? I'll help him anytime.
He ain't gonna live that down.
I think it's hilarious.
Man.
Honestly, I don't get offended when people call me names online. I really could care less. Like I tell my son, it doesn't change anything in my life. Besides, they say it doesn't matter to me. And it's funny. But
I get the same thing.
Dustin, and I like Dustin when I talk to him. I like guys with grit. You could probably understand that, right? I like guys that speak their mind.
Yeah. And
and
I
that's
get the
far
same
from me
thing.
to explain.
I get there's a theme right now with certain content creators out there that they tend to think they don't know me. Like we've only maybe met in person a few times for like 3 seconds, but they tend to think that there's like some corporate entity over my head telling like, Chris, now you have to post this. Chris, now you have to have this opinion because you do this. I don't know where people are getting this idea that I have like sponsorships telling me to advocate for flat rate, or that I have like some sort of person that pays me money to go online and say flat rate's the way to go. Because I've never actually said those things, but there are people out there that I can't believe I have to say it, but I do not have, and it's not you, Dustin, I do not have a paid sponsorship telling me what to say on social media. I can't believe I have to say that, but there is a group of people out there that are creating content or leaving comments saying this sort of stuff. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's everybody's got their own motives, and I get attacked all the time now, and I always look at like, well, I get a lot of clicks on my stuff because obviously, whatever reason, so naturally people are going to attack you to get hooked on the click thing. That's why, honestly, one of the reasons I pick up the phone and call guys is because you could sit there and go back and forth with a guy, and they really don't know what you're trying to say. Uh, like I
Yeah.
was talking to Jeff the other night. He's like, he uses voice text, audio. So do I, Chris, to you,
Yeah.
because when we talk, is that way you don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. It's just a lot easier. And I think the communication online, you get back and forth. Honestly, I don't see a rub here. We all have opinions, and everything's good, But it's just, I think that social media, there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there that wouldn't say it to your face, but they sure will type her up, won't they? You know?
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
I'll say that I think that what really triggered me, and it was just like the clip that I saw. You were like, I don't ask my guys how they're feeling at all unless I see a dip in production. And I was like, you fucking dick. I was so mad.
Yeah,
I
but if you would
couldn't
listen to
believe it.
the rest of the story I talk about, basically where I got that from is you get these guys that are like so sad, and you go over and you're like, man, his hours dipped, and you walked over. And I just literally had it happen a couple weeks ago. I didn't know one of the guys who works for me, his stepdad was sick in hospice. And I walk up and I'm like, what's wrong, Jody? What's wrong, Sad Sack McGee? I see you're walking around sad. What's going on? My son's like, oh, Dad. So Jody's like, my stepdad's, passing away. I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. And I talked to him. Now, I care about that. Do I care if he, is sad because he got bitched at by me? And let's be clear, I bitch at my guys. I'm not probably the most professional guy on TikTok. I don't take him in my office and give him a coffee. If somebody's being a dumbass, I like, hey, you're being a dumbass. Fix it and let's get on with our life. And I never talk about it again. But a lot of guys aren't like that. That's the way we were brought up. The Generation X guys. I think it's funny that guys call me a boomer. I take that as a compliment. Do you know that 50% of the wealth, 52% of the wealth in America is held by boomers right now? They got their wealth from their silent generation, their parents. So when somebody calls me a boomer, I don't consider that an insult. Considers that, but they don't know that type of stuff. It's kind of funny. And there's definitely generational things going on, how
Big time.
even in our worlds, don't you guys think, Dustin?
Yeah, absolutely.
How were you raised? Was your dad a strict dad, or how was your dad?
My dad went to go get milk and never came back. So my dad
Here,
was
let
not
me
in the picture.
foot my mouth here real quick.
Yeah, it's all good. So I actually, I had a pretty rough upbringing. My mom was not the best, and my dad was not around. And I grew up kind of, in poverty. It was poverty. I was a food stamp child for sure. And when I was 18, I had custody of my little brother and sister, and I put myself through college while working 2 jobs. So I didn't really get to see how my parents were. It just kind of seems like everybody in my generation has like this similar thing where like their parents kind of weren't around. And I learned a lot from other people's parents that I knew, I mean, just like looking at other father figures and stuff. And my best friend, Anthony, he was like a brother to me. I lived with him at one point, and his dad was the smartest man I've ever met in my life. And I wanted so bad to be like him. And it kind of got me into like technology and learning how things work and whatnot. And I didn't really see a whole lot of fatherly figures as far as, just my best friend, really.
But obviously, you realize somewhere in life that, okay, if I want to have anything, I'm gonna have to work my ass off because I see your posts and I watch all you guys. You work weekends. You're gonna make a go of this thing. There's no failure this time for you. You're gonna do
No,
everything you possibly can to freaking achieve your goals. Right? You should be proud of that. And I'll tell you something else. You had to pick the shittiest part of the car to ever work on, transmissions.
you know why I did that? I did that for job security because
Yeah.
when I first started the dealership, I was doing transmissions like on my own, but nobody knew I could do it. And the transmission guy, this was probably 2014, 15-ish, kind of the car industry kind of dipped then. Service was a little slow in my area, and they were sending guys home at the end of the day or like midway through the day, but the trans guy always had to stay. He was always busy, and there was always ever one transmission tech. And I was like, I have to be that guy. So I told them I wanted to do it. They sent me through training and I became trans guy. And ever since then, it's just something that stuck and I got good at it.
That's awesome, though. I mean, hats off to you. Being a trans guy, I rebuilt transmissions back like E4ODs and stuff like that. And I remember like I was doing one and the phone rang. And I had to go get it. And I put the coach clutch in it backwards. So every time you freaking get on it, it would apply the coast clutch. And I remember like I had to figure that out with my Jasper box. Remember Jasper came out that E4OD box, looked like a
Mhm.
fishing box, had the switches in it.
Yep.
I did some of the Zuzu transes and stuff like that, but I was not good at it because guys would always come and get me and I'd leave shit loose or put it in backwards or do this. So you have to definitely know what you're doing to do transes. So good for you being good at it, opening a trans shop. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
tough way to go, but it's good money and it's rewarding if you do it right.
Yeah. I think I'm at about $280,000 in sales since July. And next year I'm projecting I'll probably be at over $500,000 by the end of the year on my own.
So that's awesome. And the thing is about it, like if you could find a guy that would work with you side by side, day in and day out, that you could teach what you know and you could teach him yourself. He has no bad habits. That'd be the way to go. Cause I learned that from a guy that owned NLB corporations. Like if you got a guy that's really good at something, you need to hire somebody to work next to him for years. So when that guy retires, you already have the guy trained up.
Yeah.
That's how I would do it if I had a trans shop. Makes kind of
Well,
sense if you teach it your way.
it's hard to find people that you can trust too, because a lot of time you'll train somebody and they'll take your secrets and leave. That'll probably be a job for my son when he gets older. Who knows? We'll see. He'll be my predecessor.
My son's 18 and he decided that he wants to get into the family business. So he's learning how to do the numbers and run the front and stuff like that. He's 18. And, at first, like I said before on my podcast, I kind of had mixed emotions about it, to be honest with you, bringing him into a life like this. But I mean, we've done very well at my shops, but it's not getting any easier what we all do. It's getting harder for
No,
sure,
no,
and it's just,
I
so.
definitely have my shortfalls. The third transmission I ever rebuilt, it actually split in half because I had swapped a tapered snap ring with a flat snap ring on accident. So I was driving this car and I heard boom, and then everything starts shaking and my stomach hit the ground. It was crazy. And they ended up I ended up paying for that repair. Even though I was learning how to do transmissions at that time, they still made me pay for it.
Oh, were you working in like a dealership?
Yeah, I was working for
Yeah.
Chrysler. It was before
Yeah.
Fiat Chrysler.
You'll hear me on posts all the time where I'm so against that. I think that a dealership, even if you made the mistake, Dustin, the dealership should eat that mistake because they're responsible for facilitating and training you and double checking your work if you're an apprentice, and that nobody should ever have to pay for those sort of things. It should always be on the business, unless it was like a repeat offender, obviously negligent, and there's some sort of documentation leading up to this point where like, hey, we're going to start charging for this sort of thing. But there has to be a lead up to that, in my opinion.
Right.
I
Back
don't,
then, that was kind of like the common practice, though. Anytime a
Yeah.
mechanic had made a mistake, they made you pay for it.
yeah. When I worked at Garrett Auto and Truck with Steve Garrett owned it, he would make you pay for parts you messed up. And I remember spending like $100 on wheel seals on big trucks one week because we didn't have the right installation tool. You know how they got the Gates ones that come out with the steps on them. We didn't have them. We were supposed to use a punch, and I'd freaking ruin them.
Yeah.
So I would do it. Nowadays, I've never made my guys pay for a repair. Some guy the other day said, you say that you made your guy pay for the repairs and you pay for the tow call. Said, if you could find that video, let me know. I have a category that says Kevin paid for repairs, and it gets quite big sometimes. Some months it is what it is. Now, obviously, I don't pay bonus numbers on, right? We back them numbers out, but we've wrote some pretty big checks, and I just think that's part and parcel of being a business owner. Shit's going to happen. I can never charge. I've screwed up plenty of shit. I tell the story on Check Engine Chuck's website where I was having girlfriend problems. I went in the bathroom. I was on the phone with her, arguing with her, and I just got done putting carrier bearings and pinion bearings in a Ford, Ford Econoline, I think it was, and lowered her down after the bathroom. Went out on the test drive. I thought, man, this thing feels like I got a plugged fuel filter. Get on to a little bit more. All of a sudden, bam! Pinion goes through the housing, shoots outside the van, sets the grass on fire. I'm over there ready to throw up because we're broke. I just work there. I'm making $11.50 an hour. Guy pulls up. Hey, you need a ride? Takes a fire extinguisher, puts the grass fire out. I get in the guy's van to get a ride. I take the keys to the van. I'm pretty sure it was a Ford. And I put the keys in the guy's cup holder in his van. He drives me back to the shop. Thank you very much, sir. He drives away with the keys too. I never knew who he was. So I had to go there and tell my boss, hey, you won't believe what happened. A, and I got called all kinds of names. And then B, and by the way, we could tow it. We had a tow truck, but I don't have no keys. I left them in the other van. So I got double whammied. I've done shit like that. So my thing is, like, now you look back and laugh, but that was not a comfortable conversation
No.
when it happened. So to wrap this up, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. There's definitely some problems with flat rate. And from what I've taken away from this, a lot of the flat rate problems seem to be at the dealer level for whatever reason. Leadership, management, commission, taking advantage of guys, using it to fix numbers. Give me your guys' closing arguments. I'm okay with that. That's my take on it.
I will say that I think that at the dealer level, the flat rate system needs to be revised. And I think that, would you agree that the automotive technicians are the foundation of an auto shop, correct?
Without them,
so
you're
if
not
you-
fix cars. Yep.
Exactly. So if you have a broken foundation, you're not going to stick a new roof on it and hope that the roof is going to fix the foundation. That's my opinion. And I don't know how we're going to you can't force people to be good leaders. Unfortunately, I don't know how we can get to a point where we have good leaders and every work environment is perfect. But I feel as if we change the pay structure for mechanics, then we can kind of force that to happen.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So, uh, I think I know how we solve that leadership issue, Dustin. I think it has to do with you and Kevin and myself and Chuck and Chris, everybody else that's online, right? We have this really awesome way to reach people like we've never seen before. Um, it's my position that leadership caused the problems in this industry, and it's going to take leadership to solve it. And while you can't just go online and say, "Hey, be better leaders," what we can do is influence the next generation of people, and maybe that's you and me, Dustin, and some others. And everybody that starts to hear these stories from across the United States, they hopefully will. This is my personal mission. They will become inspired to study the art and science of leadership, to study the industry, to see what works and what doesn't. And when they finally step up into a leadership role, they will take these steps and measures that we hope for in this current day. And at that point, to some degree, the industry will be healed. That's why I say if we eliminate flat rate, it's not going to solve all these problems because people are still going to be doing like what you did, moving 16 cars and dealing with some manager that doesn't care about them or an advisor that doesn't know how to sell work, and it's just going to irritate and it's not going to feel fulfilling, and people do need that to some degree. Once you get that money thing figured out, they want to feel that fulfillment and actually like where they work and like the people they work with. So there has to be a culture discussion there who is managed by that leader. So that's why I'm not all for just eliminating flat rate and that'll solve everything. I think that flat rate, I agree, does need to be revised on the warranty front, the opposing pay plans with the advisors front, and then the structural front of maybe we don't do pure flat rate, like a hybrid system seems to work really well. So there's things to look at from there. But as far as the leadership piece goes, I'm here for the next generation. I'm trying to get people to be leaders, at least by example in this moment. That way, when they step up into a role of a shop foreman, manager, owner, or something like that, they're ready to hit the ground running.
I think one thing is, I think that the only way this will change at the dealer level, if the people up at top in the ivory towers, the Ford, GMs, and Stellantis, them guys start losing so much money, they have to do something with the service department. Because let me ask you a question. They don't seem to have a problem freaking open and closing a plant that costs themselves $4 billion. But they won't invest in technicians to fix their shit literally the shit they're making nowadays. But they'll take $4 billion and dump it into an EV plant downriver here in Detroit, and then say, you know what, the EV market's just not so good, so we'll just close this down, lay all the people off. And it's crazy the money they waste, but they won't put it where it should be, honestly. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, people come first, in my opinion. You take care of your people, they'll take care of the other people, which are the customers. You got to take care of your people first. And I mean, you do that, Kevin. You do it very well, and it's a bit of a case study as to why that works.
Yeah, and I will say this again, just for the listeners, is I take care of the people inside my four walls. I can't control what happens outside my four walls. So if you come at me and say flat rate is shit, that's inside your shop or your world. In my world, I make flat rate work and I make sure I take care of people. But we all know we don't need to regurgitate this whole thing. So thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. It was a pleasure. And if every time you guys want to come on again, we could talk about another hot topic. Seems like flat rate's the way to go, though, really, huh?
Flat rate, warranty
yeah.
times, manufacturers, all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, gents, you guys have a great day.
All right, gentlemen.
you
Thank
too.
you.
Yeah, bye-bye. All right, I stop.